relates to his employment as a security officer for the Ulster Savings Bank. The 12th count charges him with falsifying business records in the first degree. That count also relates to his activities on behalf of the Ulster Savings Bank. And the 13th count charges him with failure to secure workman's compensation under the workman's compensation law. Yes, sir.
In your opinion, with regards to persons that have been incarcerated or previously, how do you think this would impact those persons who he may have been directly involved as far as, again, people incarcerated, things of this nature?
For quite some time, Matthews had been involved as, I would say, more of an administrator than a witness in cases. His responsibility as the detective lieutenant was to oversee many of the investigations that the Kingston Police Department were involved in. He actually has not been a witness in a case for quite some time that I recall. And because of that, because obviously his credibility as a witness in a criminal action is suspect at this point. But because he was not asked to testify in cases, generally speaking, and was not involved in the seizure of evidence, I don't think that this indictment will affect the incarceration of people who have been previously convicted.
Thank you.
How far did the forensic auditor look back? I thought I heard you say 2001 in one of the counts there. How far back did the forensic auditor look at that?
That's correct. We started our investigation with regard to the City of Kingston in 2001. With regard to the County of Ulster, Urgent Task Force began in 2007, so our investigation only went back to 2007 in that regard.
What was the reason for starting with Kingston in 2001?
It had to do with evidence that we have. We have an evidence log of Mr. Matthews, which was part of our investigation, and that log began, I think, John, 2002, is that correct? Yes. 2002, so we started the year before the beginning of that evidence log.
Throughout your investigation, have you been able to develop any sense of what the motive might have been behind all of this?
I don't have any comment on that. Yes, sir.
The evidence log, was it only money taking, or was there other, I'm sure there's other items on the log when they seize cars or property?
I'm not sure I understand your question, sir. Was the evidence log in question that we just mentioned?
Right.
That had to do with cash sums.
Is all the stolen money related to actual thefts of cash from the evidence safe, or does it also include payroll fraud, charging for time that you did not in fact work?
Okay, if I understand your question, Jess, the two grand larceny counts in the indictment have to do with his breach of fiduciary responsibilities and the theft of sums not involved. That's separate and apart from the allegation that he was involved in what folks have termed double dipping, which is actually he was employed in 3 places at the same time, and those employment sheets frankly didn't add up.
So when we say within, you mentioned $130,000 from the City of Kingston and $79,000 from the County of Ulster, we're talking cash.
Those were exclusive of the question with regard to his employment, the secondary employments as security.
Will you be releasing the press release?
I have made a copy of the comments I made here today, and that's I obviously didn't make as many copies as I needed to, but I have some copies today, and I can issue that as well. If you need that, just contact my office and we'll do that. I've also made some copies of the indictment for those of you who would like to see a copy of the indictment. Yes, sir.
Yes, is Mr. Matthews still in possession of his firearms permit?
No. He surrendered back when he was first suspended. Could you correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe when he was first suspended, he turned in his badge and his firearm.
Thank you.
With regards to the charges related to Ulster Savings Bank, that is also the same type of thing that we're talking about with the other two instances where there was some sort of timesheet or some sort of documentation that shows that he had filled out that time while he was technically on the clock at the other two places as well, or can you elaborate on that a little more?
Yeah, one of the things that we asked our accountant to do is put together a matrix, if you will, of the different claims for employment that he made, and that involved obviously the Kingston Police Department, the Kingston City School, and in addition, the employment that he had through the Ulster Savings Bank.
And those, there was found to be all three at the same time through that matrix, or?
Hard to answer that question specifically, but I can tell you that the count in the indictment regarding the grand larceny with regard to the Ulster Savings Bank was a finding of the grand jury that he overbilled with regard to those three areas of employment.
Was there, and is there any, nothing, I imagine, prevents him from seeking that employment, just like there was nothing preventing him from seeking the employment with the district? It's just a matter of the scope of what that employment was.
The nature of those allegations was simply fraud, that not that he was not entitled to work a second job, not that the work as a security officer was inappropriate, but simply that he billed for services that he didn't offer.
Very good, thank you.
So the total amount is 200,000 altogether?
Over.
Over.
Is there anything else?
And Stas, I'm sorry, the earliest ones you were able to document go back to 2001, the city, and I mean, what's the earliest you found your evidence that there was a crime committed? I didn't know you audited in 2001 and 2011. How far back does the actual theft go?
It appears to begin in 2002.
And it began in 2002 with what exactly? Overbilling the city for overtime? I think, I want to follow up on
Yeah.
Jesse's question. I'm not getting it here. Did he steal cash out of an evidence locker repeatedly? Did he overbill for overtime? I'm not getting kind of the nuts and bolts of what exactly he did here.
The gravamen of this indictment is the first two counts of the indictment, or I'm sorry, the two counts of the indictment that charge grand larceny. The grand larceny counts do not relate to a overbilling process. The grand larceny counts had to do with his scheme, his fraudulent scheme, stealing money from various sources, which include evidence, seizure money, and working capital, both from the city of Kingston and from the county of Ulster. The allegations with regard to his overbilling the different employees, as far as the numbers, as far as the dollar and cents, which were much less significant than the grand larceny, which were exclusive of those acts.
So the grand larceny money adds up to, the grand larceny money charges add up to what? I mean, the total money.
Over $220,000.
So that's 220.
If he's convicted, how much, what's the potential time that he can serve?
The grand larceny and the second degree is a Class C felony. It's the sentence is an indeterminate sentence of 5 to 15 years. Most of the counts that relate to each of the two victims would, by law, run concurrently. There's a potential for consecutive time with regard to the different victims.
And he's in custody right now?
He is not in custody right now. He was released when he was first surrendered by his attorney back in January, February? January. He was released at that time. He's remained released. He will be brought in for arraignment later this week.
And is there going to be any way to recoup the money that he's taken at all?
That's a very good question. In any time that you have an individual who is charged with theft, we have the right to ask the court to order restitution. I'm sure that, well, I shouldn't speak for the judge, but we will be asking for an order of restitution for each of the victims, and I suspect that the court will grant that order of restitution. It's a far cry from receiving the money. So I do expect that we will receive an order of restitution when all is said and done.
Excuse me, is he under house arrest right now?
No.
Where is he?
Where is he right this minute? I don't know where he is right this minute.
So he's not in custody?
He's not in custody
He's
at this
not,
time.
he's not under electric monitoring of any sort?
That's correct.